These are interesting facts to tell your friends, part 1. Up first, did you know 2 days in your life will not last 24 hours? And those days are the day you were born and the day you will die. This is absolutely insane, and just wrap your head around that for a second. Next, it is almost impossible to speak the biggest word in the English language. And it's on the screen now, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce it. Next up, you only know you fell asleep when you wake up. So next time you're laying in bed trying to sleep, just know you won't know you fell asleep until you woken up. Next up, you can feel that your toes are touching, but your brain just ignores it. Do me a favor and try and feel your toes touching. I bet you can't. Next, 90% of people after a discussion are left thinking of arguments of stuff they could have talked about. And I know I'm 100% guilty of this. Next, our brain generates about 50,000 thoughts a day. I guarantee you can't even write down 50,000 thoughts. Finally, the last person you think about before you fall asleep is the source of all of your pain or all of your joy. So just remember that.
Imagine if you were the last person on Earth. Free food. Explore the unknown. Empty houses. Abandoned cities. Empty roads. Go anywhere you want. No school. Get any clothing you want. You don't have to worry about corona. Eat whatever you want. Peaceful sleep. No job. Waking up to silence. Screaming and hearing nothing back. Empty malls. Drive as fast as you want. Explore Area 51. Checking if you're actually alone.
Which of these facts is the hardest to believe? Breathing through your mouth while sleeping increases the risk of tooth decay. People who bite their nails tend to have stronger immune systems. Your nose is the same size as your thumb. If you see a bear, don't run. Instead, raise your arms to make yourself look bigger and scream loudly at it. There are more bacteria in your mouth than there are people in the world. If you were offered $1 million, but you have to spend the rest of your life with the second person that appears when you click share and then WhatsApp, would you take the money? Your pinky finger is actually the strongest finger on your hand. 4 more.
Facts that you probably didn't know, until now. A lot of us are used to taking flights that last anywhere from 2 to 6 hours, but did you know that the shortest flight in the world only lasts 57 seconds? A Logan Air flight between Scottish Islands Westray and Papa Westray only lasts 57 seconds and travels a distance of 1.7 miles. Like, bitch, I could run that. Another fun fact is one about elephants. Did you know not only do they hear out of their ears, but they can also hear out of their feet? Typically, to hear normal distances, elephants will open their ears like that and scan back and forth to hear. But to help them hear noises that are far away, they'll freeze, lean on their front legs, and that's how they hear. And lastly, we all know and love Pringles. Who doesn't love a good Pringle? The man responsible for creating the iconic Pringles can is named Frederick Bauer, but that's not the fun fact. The fun fact is that when he passed away, it was his dying wish that his remains be put in a Pringles can. His children honored the wish. They even debated over which flavor can they should put him in, and they settled on the original.
This Inuit tribe crafted tools out of space metal. 10,000 years ago, this meteorite landed in the Arctic in northern Greenland. An entire Inuit community sprang up around it just to make tools from the iron in the meteorite, which resulted in badass stuff like this, a spear made from a narwhal tusk tipped with space metal. They didn't even have enough wood to make fires to actually forge the metal, so they had to cold forge it, just hammering it with giant stones until it was the right shape. The tools were so valuable, they were traded as far away as Norway Norway.
Today I was asked, who has killed the most people in history? And what I found will leave you speechless. Now, most people probably assume that the answer is Adolf Hitler, the architect of the Holocaust. Others might guess the answer is the Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin, but both Stalin and Hitler were outdone by one man named Mao Zedong. From 1958 to 1962, his Great Leap Forward policy led to the deaths of up to 45 million people, easily making it the biggest episode of mass murder to have ever occurred. In pursuit of this utopian paradise, Mao Zedong herded villagers from all across China into giant people's communes so that everything was collectivized. People had their work, their home, their land, belongings, livelihoods, all of it taken away. In collective canteens, food distributed by spoonful, according to merit, became a weapon used to force people to follow the party's every dictate. Now, historians have speculated that tens of millions died from starvation alone. And it is not only the sheer number of people that were killed, but also the manner in which people died. Between 2 and 3 million victims were tortured to death or similarly killed, and often for the slightest infraction. There's one story of a boy who stole a handful of grain in a commune, and they forced his father to bury him alive. The father died of grief a few days later. Another time, a man had his ears chopped off, his legs tied with iron wire, a 10-kilogram stone repeatedly dropped on his back, and then he was branded with a sizzling tool. And all of this was punishment for digging up a potato.
3 historical facts that will turn your perception of time upside down. Number 3. It's a surprising but very real fact. The guillotine was still being used for executions in France when the first Star Wars movie was released in theaters. In fact, the last execution by guillotine took place in 1977, the same year as the movie's release. This shows how some ancient practices can persist over time, even in an era of technology and innovation. Number 2. It may seem incredible, but the Tyrannosaurus rex lived closer to our time than to the Stegosaurus. Indeed, the T-Rex roamed the Earth around 68 to 66 million years ago, while the Stegosaurus existed during the Jurassic period, which ended about 145 million years ago. This means there's a gap of nearly 80 million years between these two dinosaur species. This example illustrates the astounding timescale that characterizes the history of life on Earth. Number 1. Cleopatra, the last queen of ancient Egypt, lived closer to the time of the moon landing in 1969 than to the construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza. The pyramid was built around 2560 BC, whereas Cleopatra ruled from 69 BC to 30 BC. This puts into perspective the longevity of certain ancient civilizations like that of Egypt, and shows how human progress can be both slow and fast.
Fun fact, until 1822 we had absolutely no idea what happened to birds in the winter. All we knew were there were birds in the summer and no birds in the winter. And people developed a lot of crazy theories about what would happen to the birds every fall. Some people said they would dive into lakes and hibernate under the ice. Some people thought they would burrow into the ground to hibernate, while other people said the birds would transition themselves into other animals like mice and rabbits in the winter, and then would transition themselves back into birds in the spring. A Harvard educator named Charles Morton did propose migration in 1694, but he believed birds migrated to the moon and back. Then in 1822, a German hunter was out looking for dinner near the town of Klutz when he shot and killed a white stork. But when he picked up the bird, he found it already had a 30-inch spear in its neck. Finding this interesting, the hunter brought his kill to the nearby University of Rostock, where scientists found the iron-tipped wood spear to be of Central African origin. This proved without a doubt the stork had migrated between Europe and Africa, and led scientists down the right path to discover that birds migrate to warmer climates in the winter.
Disturbing facts you didn't need to know. Did you know that sometimes doctors use teeth of dead people to make dentures? And talking about teeth, there's a fish in South America that has human teeth, and for some reason it looks so creepy. If you ever see this cute frog, run away as fast as possible, because it's called the golden poison frog, and it has enough poison to kill 15 humans in a few minutes. Now, we all know a chainsaw is used to cut wood, right? But did you know it was invented to assist childbirth? And finally, there are still around 40 million slaves around the world, with India having the majority of them at 8 million, mostly kids.
Weird facts about the world, part 1. It snows in the Sahara Desert. Coca-Cola does not exist in only 2 countries. Colombia's brightest rainbow is in a river. You're always 7 years behind Ethiopia.
What happens if you put your head inside of a particle accelerator and turn it on? Kinda like this Hot Wheels loop, particle accelerators accelerate particles to nearly the speed of light. And this guy, Anatoly Bugorsky, was unfortunate enough to stick his head inside of one while it was on, and this is what happened to him. Scientists use these giant circular machines, also known as atom smashers, to see how subatomic particles like protons behave while traveling at the speed of light, doing tests like crashing them into each other and other complex science stuff. And yes, I said at the speed of light. Well, almost. They get it up to like 99.99999% the speed of light, because 100% is still impossible at the moment, but hey, we're getting close. They do this by accelerating subatomic particles like protons in a long circular vacuum tube that's colder than space. They start off in a smaller loop where they use electric currents from really strong batteries to get the particles moving fast, and magnets to keep the particles on a stable path as they curve through the loop to be fed back into the batteries and get even faster. This feedback loop gets them fast enough until they're fed into a bigger loop to reach even higher speeds. And they inject a second set of protons here so they can play Ring Around the Rosie with each other and just keep getting faster. They're then fed into the final loop where the two sets of protons are accelerated in opposite directions so they could collide into each other and do science. This right here would be the Large Hadron Collider, the biggest particle accelerator in the world at 27 kilometers in circumference, where the protons travel the entire circular distance more than 11,000 times per second. So yeah, it's fast. The LHC is in Switzerland and contains 1.8 billion kilometers of wires, enough to go the distance of not around Earth, but of Earth's entire orbit around the sun twice, or from the Earth to the sun and back 6 times. Anyway, so that's cool and all, but now that we know what a particle accelerator is, let's put our head inside of one. On July 13th, 1978, a scientist named Anatoly Bugorsky was working on the U-70 synchrotron particle accelerator just outside of Moscow, which is much smaller at 1.5 kilometers, but the speeds are pretty much the same. So there was an experimentation room in this lab where the accelerated protons are exposed to open air for a brief moment, and they had bare safety measures in place to make sure that no one walks in when a live beam is going. But Bugorsky showed up to the room 5 minutes earlier than he was supposed to. Somebody forgot to lock the door, and the emergency light that signaled a live beam burnt out. Say hello to Murphy's Law. He enters the room and doesn't realize there's a beam of protons traveling through the open air in front of him because they're both silent and invisible. He bends over to have a look at a few monitors and accidentally puts his head directly into the beam of trillions of protons traveling basically the speed of light. That's 76 billion electron volts of energy passing through his skin, skull, brain, and out the other side. But the craziest part? He felt no pain at all, and there wasn't even a hole in his head. That's because protons are so small that they physically passed in between the empty space of the atoms in his own head. And the voltage didn't stop in his head, it just passed right through it, which is why he didn't die from 76 billion volts. All he reported was his entire field of vision being overcome with a light brighter than 1,000 suns, but a light that only he could see. This light was inside of his head. He kinda tripped out for a sec, but once he realized he was fine, he logged the experience and went home without telling anyone. But the next day his head started to swell, so he went to the doctors and they calculated the exact path the protons passed through his head in. Although he survived, in the years to come he lost hearing in his left ear, started having episodic seizures, and the nerves on the left side of his face were destroyed, freezing his facial expression in place for the last 45 years.
Yo, what's up? These are fun facts about women that are actually pretty crazy. Part 5. Taller women are more likely to have cancer, whereas shorter women are more likely to have smaller babies. I don't think that's a fair trade, but it's not my doings. In Greece, throwing an apple at a woman was considered a marriage proposal. Now, if anyone did that in America and they threw an apple at the woman they were trying to propose to, she would definitely walk up to him and calmly go, "Yo, why'd you throw that apple at me? That ain't cool. Now I'm gonna have to beat you, bruh." 80% of women will ask questions that they already know the answer to, and the reason being is they're not trying to interrogate us, they're just trying to see if we're listening and if we actually care about what they're saying. So just pay attention, guys. A lot of women lose 2 to 3 hours of sleep every night due to overthinking, anxiety, worry, whatever that may look like. And I'm not saying guys don't do this too, but women are linked to having less serotonin, which helps them go to sleep. So women, if you're still up, get on the Xbox, play some COD, and smack some noobs for us.
If you earned $100,000 a day since the day Christ was born till now, you still wouldn't be as rich as Jeff Bezos. We actually know how to make car doors silent when you shut them, but it freaks people out and makes them think it's still open, which means that every car door sound was engineered to sound that way. Nike's famous slogan, "Just Do It," was actually inspired by the last words of a murderer on death row.
Disturbing facts that will ruin your life. When whales reach a certain age, they will eventually be too weak to swim back to the surface for air, so they will just suffocate to death and eventually sink to the bottom of the ocean. When you die, you will be aware that you are dead until the moment your brain fully ceases function. When getting laser eye surgery, you can smell the parts of your eyes being shaved down. During the French Revolution, where the guillotine was introduced, the people to be executed fought to be first, as the blade would dull after multiple uses, and wouldn't cut a head clean off at the first attempt. If you're male, after you die, your loved ones can have a doctor electrocute your prostate to force you to ejaculate for sperm. Humans have enough bite power to bite off their own finger, bone and all. The only thing stopping us is our brain's natural safety factor. A deceased human body can take between 24 to 48 hours to decompress, releasing the remaining blood, urine, and fecal matter, depending on the situation, position, and method of death. If you die on a submarine, they put your body in the fridge with all the food. If not, up a torpedo tube. It's actually common that corpses will periodically burp, fart, gasp, groan as gases escape through the mouth and anus. When you get burned by electricity, it actually leaves marks shaped like lightning on your skin. Hit the plus sign if you want to learn more facts.
Blood-curdling facts that you wish you never knew. Part 16. Kangaroos are absolutely terrifying, and if you mess with one, it will likely lure you into the water and attempt to drown you. There's an abandoned Disney park that you aren't allowed to go to, and it was shut down in 1999 because it was infested with free-roaming alligators. The animals were being abused, and an 11-year-old boy died from a flesh-eating bacteria found in the park's waters. In the movie The Wizard of Oz, the lion's costume was made out of a real skinned lion. This is the John Lawson house. No one knows who lives there, but every single day, there are several female mannequins sitting on the front porch wearing a variety of clothing. Their positions and outfits change daily, and many believe this is meant to convey some sort of message. And in 1871, a train crash took place just 200 feet away from the home, killing 22 people. And these mannequins are always pointing toward the crash.
Here are some fun facts to tell at parties that'll make you seem super cool and likable. In an average lifespan, a person breathes in around 45 pounds of dust and debris. You know how they say dogs' mouths are cleaner? That's because there's more bacteria in a person's mouth than there is people in Canada and the US combined. A man can grow up to 6 feet of nose hair in their lifetime and up to a 30-foot long beard if he never shaves. And if you ever wanted to swim in a pool of saliva, it would only take one person at the age of 60 to have produced enough saliva in his lifetime to fill up 2 pools. By the age of 60, a person will have lost 50% of their taste buds. That explains why old people like grits so much. The ear is actually really fragile, and it only takes about 7 pounds of force to rip your ear off.
These are 8 horrifying facts that will probably keep you up at night. When Apollo 11 landed, it only had 20 seconds of remaining fuel. 4 months ago, a deceased rapper by the name Gunu had his corpse on stage while fans were partying around his body. The average person wastes 5 months of their lives waiting for red lights to turn green. Cruise ships have morgues, just in case someone, during the trip. If you have red eyes after swimming, it's not from chlorine. It's from the chlorine mixing with other people's urine. The furthest part of the ocean from land is Point Nemo. If you get stuck there, you're not coming back. Sunburn are your cells dying to avoid being cancerous. Most laugh tracks and shows are people from the 50s, which means you're hearing the laughter of dead people. Yeah, there's a lot more, like for part 14.
Kara Robinson was 15 years old when a man in his late 30s abducted and assaulted her for 18 hours before she outsmarted him.
A special thank you to Lifetime for partnering with me and providing the following photos for their movie, The Girl Who Escaped, the Kara Robinson story, to help highlight 3 ways Kara survived her kidnapping. Number 1. Kara counted the number of turns her kidnapper made, which helped lead authorities straight to his home. Number 2. She memorized important information like the serial number on the plastic container he forced her into, and the names of his doctor and dentist, which were visible on his refrigerator. Number 3, she controlled her emotions, keeping him at ease and gaining his trust. Authorities say Kara's self-control is what may have saved her life because she was able to develop an escape plan, but they had no clue the man they were chasing had killed before. Visit mylifetime.com/watchripped to watch The Girl Who Escaped, the Kara Robinson story, and all other Ripped from the Headlines movies.
I am so glad that other people are talking about O.J. Simpson's book, because I have, like, this has been one of my many Roman empires in life, but this was O.J. Simpson's book that ended up, I'm going to tell you the story in a second, but If I Did It is what this book is actually called, Confessions of the Killer. And here's the story. So he said that this book was a hypothetical account of how he would have committed double homicide if he had done it. So in 2006, a publisher announced that they were going to publish this book by O.J. Simpson. So they received a phone call from an attorney who said that O.J. was ready to confess in a book, I guess. And actually, I thought it was some kind of scam and I didn't believe him. And I thought, this guy's a lunatic. But I took his number and I said I'd call him back. So then she did call him back. And of course, they immediately bought the book because, like, what a wild thing. So it sold for $3.5 million. And when it was set to publish, there was a bunch of hype around it. I absolutely remember this. And the victims' families were outraged. Absolutely. They were absolutely outraged. Because don't forget about double jeopardy. At this point, he was tried for those murders and acquitted. So he could no longer be prosecuted for those murders, even if he said in a book that he had done it. He could be prosecuted for other things, but just not those murders. So after all of the backlash, HarperCollins pulled the book. And then in 2007, Ron Goldman's family obtained rights to the book. They were awarded a $38 million wrongful death settlement against Simpson. And as part of that settlement, they were awarded the rights to the book. So they revised the book, added in their own personal commentary, and then released the book in 2007 anyway. So if you want to buy this book, all of the royalties go to Ron Goldman's family. So I highly recommend it. And like, I'm probably going to, because I have always wanted to read this book and just like get a glimpse into how he would have narrated these crimes as he was getting to the point of committing them. It's just so wild to me that this book freaking exists. But I never wanted to buy it because I didn't want to give O.J. Simpson any money. So it's really nice to know that all of the rights go to the Ron Goldman Foundation for Justice. What do you think? Would you read the book?